The food people choose to put into their bodies has the power to hurt or heal, despite all the efforts to educate consumers on the importance of making healthy food choices. Studies have shown that 80% of consumers are confused about food health information, with 59% of them doubting their choices. Who you seek food health advice from is as equally important as what you eat every day. The BeFUSED podcast is a fusion of two ideologies: the culinary arts with medical science centered on helping individuals make more informed decisions about the foods they should eat daily. Our hope through listening to this podcast series is that we will help individuals make more informed decisions that will positively impact their overall health.
Hello and welcome to the BeFUSED podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. This week on the BeFUSED podcast, I'm with Dr. Anthony Marotta and with Myrna Selzler, the catalyst at BABz. BABz is an international leader in the plant-rich, nutritious, easy-to-prepare, shelf-stable food products with labels you can read and ingredients you can trust. We're recognized in the seeds and grain category as a top shelf product. So with that, I'm going to bring in Dr. Marotta just to welcome him back to the show again. So welcome.
Hi, Don. Nice to be back again.
Yeah, good to have you back. And, so today we're going to talk with Myrna a little bit about BABz. I know that you really wanted to talk a little bit about the brands and the things that, overall that you're working with. And anything else you'd like to say before we get started?
All good. I'm looking forward to this episode and featuring, obviously Myrna and BABz as well in this. So thank you.
Yeah. So with that, Myrna, welcome.
Thank you so much, Don. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So I guess since it's your first time, would you mind just telling a little bit about yourself to the audience?
Okay. I live in the interior of British Columbia in Canada, and that's where our processing plant is. I grew up in a small town in Alberta that looked much like Colorado, where you are. I went to university and got a degree in home ec, and I majored in family studies, but I had to take a lot of foods and nutrition courses and some food science courses. So I've always known enough about foods to be dangerous, not enough to be good in my mind. But my business life has pretty much always been in real estate. I've owned a number of real estate brokerages. And after I sold my last one 5 years ago, I got lured into, okay, let's go with the story. Here we go. So a couple of months after I sold my brokerage, I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so that was kind of a bit of an about face. And so I went through what I needed to go through. It seemed like I interviewed many, many women, and they said, if you've got cancer in one breast, you're probably going to get it in the other. So you either take care of the business now or you take care of the business later. So I decided to have a double mastectomy in December of 2017. And then shortly afterwards, I had to go see an oncologist whose name, and this is relevant, was Dr. Baxter. He wanted me to take a drug called tamoxifen. And one of the side effects of tamoxifen is blood clots. So I thought, I'm going to die of an aneurysm on my bathroom floor and nobody will find me for days. So I wasn't that keen on taking the drug. Plus, my dog's name is Baxter. So how can you really take a doctor seriously who's named after your dog? Thank God my dog isn't named Marotta. New dog. But anyway, I decided for in my case, it was going to give me like a 5 to 10% chance of not reoccurring cancer. I thought, like, for 5 to 10%, I can do something else. Like I was always been curious about food, so I could go plant-based. I could stay more physically fit, and that's probably going to get me 5 to 10%. And I'm probably not going to have an aneurysm. So that's what I did. And like I said, I'm more of a mad scientist than a chef. So I started creating things, checking out recipes, and I never follow a recipe in my life. And I created a dry mix flatbread, and then someone said, oh, that would look good as a burger. And I went that night, and I thought about all the things that really annoyed me about plant-based burgers. Like, they look like fried brains. They only resemble a burger in shape. They have no nutritional value. They're ugly and they fall apart. So I just went to work and addressed all those concerns. And like literally with just very few modifications, came up with what I came up with.
Well, it's amazing to me, overall. So I have a very good friend who's vegan.
Okay.
And he's taken me to some of the restaurants that are his absolute favorites. And I very strongly align with what you talk about with regards to the texture of something not looking quite right, or, maybe the flavor not tasting quite right, or even like something that you'd like to eat. And so, I can understand, kind of why why you started at that point as well.
Yeah, because so much of it is just nasty, and people aren't going to want to eat nasty food. Like they'll torture themselves a bit, but we want to eat food that's fun. So, like our food was designed to be sort of replacement of comfort food,
Mm.
and my goal is not to be rigid, just like I can't follow a recipe 100% all the time. That's why somebody else makes this besides me. But I'm going to be 100% vegan 100% of the rest of my life is just too rigid. So like our products are designed so that people can use them with meat if they want, or with families, kids. They're just, do what you want, be flexible, just get a little bit more plant-based into your diet.
Yeah. Well, I
Plant
think
rich. Sorry to interject.
Plant rich, yes. He was correcting me yesterday as well. So I mean, I'm trying to learn the dialogue as I go along as a host, and you just make sure that I'm using the right words as well. So I'm sure this is going to come up, that plant based versus plant rich is going to probably get, going to have to be something where we have a penalty jar or something where I put a contribution in every time just to stop. So I mean, one of the things, honestly, reading, a little bit about you, Myrna, as well. I mean, the one thing that I would say is that, you're somebody that I would reference as, much more of a warrior as well, because you were a kidney donor, also, right?
Yeah, almost 9 years ago now, my brother had kidney failure. And I was asking him, like, I always sort of have my story about why it happened. And I asked him, he said, well, they just said it's an autoimmune thing, which he says that translates to they don't know why.
Mm.
And he was on dialysis for a year, hoping that his kidney would kickstart. And it didn't. But as soon as we found out that he was going to need a transplant, I knew instantly that I wanted to donate to him. He had his two really wonderful kids, and they were not yet in high school, and I wanted him to see them graduate, and now he has seen them graduate high school and graduate university. And it was a bit of an ordeal, even that I had a kidney stone that I didn't even know about, and that's the kidney he got. I got the good one, he got the bad one. But it's really interesting. And then, so when I started to create this food, because he's supposed to be low sodium, as should I, he's a great cook. He's been making seasonings for years that are very pure, low sodium, no fillers, like really flavor rich. So I said, I'd come up with this plant-based meat thing. I want these flavors. Can you make them for me? So he did. And that's how we got to be low sodium in the different flavors that we have. So
Wow.
it's kind of cool to have that other relationship with him beyond the kidney thing.
Yeah,
And just to interject there too, and that's Dawn, that's, again, when we look at like ingredient, like decks and stuff, the seasoning is a culprit as well. Like, again, there's so many hidden, additives and things within there. So again, just even looking at, how BABz has formulated, and, we've done a thorough analysis, of their products, the spices don't have, arguably, all these additives associated with it. So sometimes you'll find like dextrose in there, silicon dioxide, and other things like, to prevent them from binding, so to speak. The BABz stuff is very clean.
Wow.
Super clean. I want people to be able to read the labels. And if they wanted to read the label and go to a store, like a bulk food store or something, they could look at all the ingredients, go buy them, and see if they can figure it out themselves. Like, it's that simple. I hate multisyllabic words. I don't like eating multisyllabic words.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny because so many things that you do wind up eating, you pick it up and you start to read the labels, of which, I only started to do because of this podcast. So thank you again, Dr. Marotta, for that, I was telling my wife this story about chicken, not just having chicken in it, and the fact that, Dr. Marotta is having all this trouble, sourcing pork and things like that. And I would never thought these problems. And then on your side, right, developing these foods, it sounds like it was a real challenge as well to not include ingredients that you can't just read on a label.
Yeah, but I think it was almost to my advantage that I didn't know about ingredients like that. I've always only cooked with whole foods. So I didn't know, like, those big words that Anthony just said, those dextrose things. I don't know what those are. So that never even crossed my mind. Like, the one thing that helps our burgers, our meats bind together is nutritional yeast. And just a few weeks ago, a friend had been whining because she'd made a curry and put in too much nutritional yeast and it got all gummy and stuck together. And as I'm formulating that Friday night, I think, gummy, stick together. That's perfect. That's exactly what I want. Light bulb moment. So it's just fortuitous almost, I think, the way things unfolded for me.
Yeah, I mean, so let's just talk a little bit more about the starting point of BABz. So, so I heard two different stories that sound like they kind of came together. So one, sort of your journey with cancer, but then also your brother's journey with his struggles with his kidney as well, are what led to the creation. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, mostly my decision not to take the tamoxifen was the big thing. And then I was able to bring Wayne in because I knew I could trust him to do a really clean seasonings. I'd talked to a consultant that had been in this space before, and his recommendation is that we have different flavors because then people can eat our product several times a week and they won't get bored of it. You can have a burger, you can have lasagna, like we were talking about, you have tacos, you can have a breakfast sausage, you can make a shepherd's pie. So that's why, that's when I reached out to Wayne to see if he could create those. And he's got a few more on the books where he's mixing up concoctions for other kind of flavors as well.
And then did you stay in real estate for, while you were creating the company? Were they both kind of coming along together, or you just said that's it for real estate and you just completely shifted and started BABz?
Well, no, I had a 2-year contract after I was diagnosed with cancer. I had to stay in the transition of my company sale. And then I was off, and I'd previously done leadership and communications consulting, and I was launching back into that when COVID happened. And then so BABz sort of came about with COVID. And frankly, like, I've been able to find some really good people to work with me in my company. But as you may know, a startup costs lots of money. So I'm actually have a very lovely position back managing 2 real estate brokerages and being able to run BABz at the same time. But I've got tons of flexibility. But again, it helped by doing a little bit of work on the side. It helps fund the business as we grow. So.
Yeah. I'm experiencing that as well on a routine basis. So, I'm very familiar with having to manage kind of, lots of entrepreneurial things as you go through it. And then, where did the name BABz come from?
Well, we started with flatbreads, and I don't know, we went bodacious artisan breads, and we couldn't get the S URLs. We could get Z. And as we were dealing with it, then we came up with the burgers, and again, couldn't get the S URL. So we got the Z, and it was too much writing and nobody could spell bodacious. So it got shortened down to BABz. And just that simple, because we're lazy.
And so if anybody's looking for your products, right. I mean, I guess the next natural sort of thing to talk about is, I mean, how would people find the BABz products, and where would they be sold today?
Well, on our website, BeBUSED.com. And the tricky part about the word BABz is I never realized how close it was to baby. So you might need to drill down a little bit because baby might show up instead of BABz. And we're on several online stores, and we're in about 170 stores across Canada. And we're meeting with the big US chain in about 2 or 3 weeks. So we should be, especially in the Northwest, I would say we'll be available fairly shortly in the US, but online.
And then, so if somebody's anywhere around the world, could they get it online?
Yeah, totally. We're happy to ship it.
All right.
And we're working with a company that can ship far less expensively than we can, and not an Amazon company, but a different kind of shipping company. So that's coming out in the next month or so. So it'll make it really easy for people.
Perfect. And then how's adopting a plant-based lifestyle helped you?
Well,
Plant rich, sorry.
Rich,
I'll self-correct real quick.
I'm gonna get it drilled into both of your heads.
yeah, I'm gonna have to say even seed based because we're primarily seed. So how's it helped me? Well, I went to see a lawyer yesterday that I hadn't seen in a couple of years, and she said, "Oh my God, you're looking younger than you've ever looked." So, okay, I don't know, and that's one of the things people comment a lot about. Um, I don't have aches and pains. I don't tired. I feel great. Most people are surprised by how old I am. You could ask if you want, and I could tell you.
Uh,
No,
Um,
that's amazing. I mean, and especially after having gone through what you've gone through with cancer as well. I mean, that has to be amazing, as well. It's so, I mean, just really quickly, I'm 52 and my aches and pains and my joint creaks and everything else. I believe me, I think a lot about this as well as I walk through my daily life, that, we just need BABz closer.
You do like little like I'm 64 and I feel 35. I just do. Mentally, physically, and it's just easy and it's so refreshing to see what you can do with plant-based food and hanging around with Anthony. Like you really elevate the level of cleanliness of the food that you look at too. Like it just is a whole new level of awareness. And not only awareness, but the quality is there. So the taste is there. You know that the nutrition is there. It's just it reminds me of when you look at the ocean and then you go snorkeling and you see a whole other world. When
Right.
you elevate your eyes to see the world through Anthony's eyes, it's like going snorkeling because you see a whole other world and it's elevated and it's beautiful.
Well, your experience is a little different than mine, so it's a little scary for me to think about some of the things that he keeps talking about as well. And so, Dr. Marotta, I mean, I'll let you comment in a second, but I mean, I think about a lot of the discussions that we've had around, sort of the things that we do wind up eating, and frankly, it really does open my eyes. You're right about that part, but there's a part of it that I'm just sitting here going, I need to try and continue to migrate my life more towards a cleaner food lifestyle. Right. I mean, that's the sort of mental process that keeps going on with me as well.
But be kind to yourself, be gentle. Do it a meal at a time, a day at a time, and a snack at a time. Because, like my brother, for example, as a kidney transplant recipient, he should not smoke.
Mm-hmm.
He calls himself a smoker. He just chooses not to smoke. Because if he said he was a non-smoker, he'd freak out and start smoking. So to just say, it's just the psychology of it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to be plant-based today. I'm going to make a plant-based choice at this restaurant today. And just hold yourself gently, gently accountable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because Dr. Marotta knows this. I wrote a book on overcommitment. And that's one of the things that I talk about in there as well, is that, look, if you're somebody who routinely overcommits today and you move away from it, but then you have a point where you sort of move back towards overcommitment again, don't sit around and blame yourself. Just kind of accept it and move on. But at the same time, slowly convert your life. So how did you meet Dr. Marotta?
Did we meet? Oh, I know. We were at a food show together, and you were in the booth next to us.
Yeah.
And yeah, we met September of 2021.
Correct.
So was there food sharing at this conference?
Of course.
Right. And then what's it been like for you to work with the Peckish team?
Really interesting. Again, because of the standards that they set and the clarity of their vision about clean foods and Anthony's ability to see what is good, what is not good, and not only just what is good, what's not good, but why it's not good and why it is good and what the benefits would be and what the disadvantages would be if you had something else. Like we're talking about doing a different version of even this because Anthony can think of a better way that we could do our plant-based meat alternatives, plant-rich meat alternatives. Let's get this right.
Yeah,
um,
I mean, I can add there too, just again, one thing that we've discussed is the utilization of nutritional yeast, so to speak. And again, on the in the background of a candida infection or even in an autoimmune like situation, again, some of these let's say host ingredients like the nutritional yeast, again, it's a foreign substance, can they actually exacerbate or trigger an inflammatory reaction? Because we're seeing like that a lot of foods actually can induce certain cytokines, pro-inflammatory cytokines, to be upregulated. They have an effect on CRP, and again, so on the background of an autoimmune condition, that's the last thing, for example, that you want to do. And even, for example, with someone prone to yeast infections, the last things that you typically would do is consume more yeast and sugar. So again, when we think of formulating food to tailor it to specific indications, these are things that we discuss as a group when we're working with brands as well.
and like I think I can reformulate it. I do have 80,000 bags to get rid of first before, but I think reformulate it so that no one will even notice, and it'll meet that requirement, so that it'll serve a greater population in a healthier way. Did you notice that Anthony uses multisyllabic words?
Yes. Yes. He uses them, in lots of different ways that I have to sort of, sit back and process as well. I grew up in Northwest Indiana, and so my brain's a little different than most. So was it easy for you to get certified?
They put us through our paces, but because our product is so clean, it was fairly straightforward. But we certainly had to go through our paces, and Anthony researched the sources of our ingredients to make sure that they were clean and met the requirements that like the Project Healthy Human sets. Yeah, so I wouldn't say it was really hard, but that's because we started with a good product. But it certainly wasn't a cakewalk either.
Yeah. And if I can add too, the one area that we really drilled in on was with the nutritional yeast. Again, they provided all the requisite documents that we needed to do our diligence, but when it came time to qualifying, the biologic agent of nutritional yeast, that was something we, basically ended up, getting in contact with the actual manufacturer that they source the ingredient from, and we did further diligence on them, looking at, okay, how are you manufacturing it? Do you have all the criterion, like the batch to batch, lot to lot, like kind of consistency that we would see like in the pharma world? And then even kind of coupled with that, if there's clinical data associated with it, where a trial's been done, where the trials been done, to what extent have trials been done, is it a single trial? Is it like, have you done multiple trials? What's the sample size that you've done? So really looking at it with that like clinical or pharmaceutical lens to make sure that there's robustness in vetting and qualifying vendors. And, I mean, I commend, the BABz team for doing such a great job with their product formulation.
Yeah. And I mean, just really quickly, we have a few people, on that are listening to us live as we've gone through here. So this is Don Davis. I'm the host of the BeFUSED podcast. We have Dr. Anthony Marotta with me from Peckish Foods, and then also Myrna Selzler with BABz products as well. So yeah, I mean, we're having a great conversation about overall how companies, go through the process of getting certified with Peckish, as well as, just in general, talking about BABz Foods and the journey that Myrna has gone through. So what have you learned in the process of getting certified, Myrna? How has it helped your company?
I think it's given us so much more clarity, because in becoming certified, I started to look at the ingredients that other product lines had. And so I just have real clarity that we're not going down any of those paths. And I think if I ever started to wander, Anthony would whip me back into line again. But that's what the absolute clarity, like there are lines we will not cross. We'll not have nutritional is the biggest word that is in our ingredient deck. We're not having any bigger words than that. We're going to keep it really simple, whole foods that people can, labels you can read, ingredients you can trust. Like just that have absolute clarity about that.
I absolutely love that, because so many of the ingredients in so many products, they're hard to decipher. Like you said, this concludes part 1 of the BeFUSED podcast with BABz. And in the next episode, we're going to cover things like the foods that BABz offers and how you can obtain these in your household. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you for listening to BeFUSED. For complete details about this podcast, including show notes, how to get in touch with the guests, and more episodes, please visit www.projecthealthyhuman.ca. If there's someone you'd like for us to invite to the show as a guest, please let us know by sending a message at the podcast website. Please click subscribe in your favorite podcast app, share and tell a friend about it, and last but not least, rate the podcast. Thank you again.